Space Nine, Starburst, Chapter 3. Jake searched for a long time, but he could not find Nog. There was one way of searching that he did not try. Although only official station personnel wore communicator badges, everyone who lived permanently on Deep Space Nine carried locators, miniature devices that allowed the computer to lock onto them. Jake could have asked the computer for his friend's location, but Jake knew that if Nog could not be found without using the computer, it was because the Ferengi boy did not wish to be found. After all, Jake thought it was important to respect a friend's privacy. Still feeling puzzled and a bit left out, Jake finally went to the quarters he shared with his father. After first ordering a snack from the food replicator, Jake went to his bedroom and settled into a chair to read. He loved to munch peanut butter bars and drink milk while reading a book. He summoned up a history of baseball on his computer screen and read for a while. The game had not been played in an organized way for many years, but on Earth, kids still played it, and Jake liked to read about the history of baseball. He liked the thought of its being the national pastime of a whole country, and the names of the great players were like music to him: Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and the greatest pitcher of the 21st century, Hiro Osaka. Jake began to grow sleepy. Day and night had no real meaning when you lived on a space station instead of a planet, but all the species aboard Deep Space Nine had their own periods of rest. Ferengi needed little sleep, and usually their night began well after midnight. The sloth-like Elephants, on the other hand, were active for only about 2 hours a day before their personal night began. As it happened, the day on Bajor was almost the same as Earth's, and so the station was on a 24-hour clock. Jake and his dad usually turned in somewhere between 10 and 11 at night. But this evening might be different. At 8, Benjamin Sisko called, waking Jake from a doze, to announce that he would be late. He told Jake to order his own dinner and not to forget the vegetables this time. Jake stirred himself, ordered from the replicator another chocolate malted and a hamburger with all the trimmings, telling himself that pickles really were a kind of vegetable, and took the meal into his bedroom to eat. He had just finished when he heard the living room door hiss open. "Dad?" Jake called. "I'm in here." But the quick, light footsteps he heard were not those of his father. Jake started for the doorway. Before he reached it, a panting, shaken Nog burst through. "It's been after me all day," the Ferengi boy wailed, eyes wide with fear. With a glance back over his shoulder, he moaned, "Jake, hide me!" Sure, Jake said. "Come on into my room." As soon as Nog had rushed past, Jake spoke an order, sealing the door to everyone except his father. "You're safe now," he said. "Hey, sit down. You look terrible." Nog slumped into the chair in front of Jake's desk. "I've been running from that thing ever since I left the restaurant," he said, with a weary groan. "No use. It follows me everywhere." Jake sat on the edge of his bunk, folding his legs under him, as if he were about to meditate. "Come on, Nog. I saw the air sketch that Molly made, and she switched it off just after you ran out. It's all gone." Nog stared at him. "Not the sketch," he said. "It was the Ferengist itself, the real thing. Didn't you see it?" No, Jake said. "And neither did anybody else, except maybe Molly, and she just made it up. Did you think—" "Think!" exclaimed Nog. "Think! I know what I saw. It was tall and thin with a hood and those red staring eyes. Just like in the stories that Grandma Wagga used to tell me to frighten me to sleep. Jake, what have I done? Why is it haunting me?" Hey, Jake said. "Calm down. First of all, tell me about this thing. I don't know much about Ferengists." Nog licked his lips. "Could I have something to drink?" he asked. "I've been running all day." "Sure." After unsealing the door, they went into the living room, where Jake ordered a Bajoran fizz from the food replicator. In a moment, a tall glass of blue liquid appeared. Trying to hold it away from him, Jake took it out of the replicator. It smelled like old gym shoes, but Ferengi thought it was delicious. He handed the cold glass to Nog. The Ferengi boy took several greedy gulps. The drink seemed to calm him down. At last he said,
Ferengis are ghosts of the ancestors. They live in the world of spirits, and they never trouble the living, except when one of their descendants has done something very bad, very stupid, or very destructive of profits.
He drained the glass, burped, and said,
What have I done? Do you think going to a human school would make my ancestors so angry that they would punish my whole family? How could my schooling have poisoned their profits? My Uncle Quark is richer than ever, and I've never done anything to...
Calm down, will you? Said Jake before Nog could get all worked up again. Hey, come on. Do Ferengis ever go for kids in these stories you've heard?
All the time,
wailed Nog.
If a kid is in a game and fails to cheat his opponents, they haunt him. Whenever a kid is in trouble with his parents and doesn't lie to get out of it, the Ferengis are waiting to ruin them all.
Well, I'm pretty sure no Ferengist is waiting to ruin your family, Jake said. Look, maybe it's all your imagination. Molly has this invisible friend, and she drew a picture of what he's supposed to look like. Maybe it just happened that the picture looked a little like what a Ferengist is supposed to. That accidental resemblance could have startled you, and then you imagined you saw it pursuing you. That's possible. Nog got up and walked unsteadily to the food replicator. He replaced his glass and ordered another Bajoran fizz. After he had drunk half of the slimy, bubbling blue liquid, he said,
I see what you mean, Jake, but I don't think so. I ran all through the promenade, and when I turned around, I could see that monster's eyes watching me, towering up above the crowd. Then I hid out in a turbo shaft, but I saw the horrible eyes glowing at me from the dark, so I ran to Constable Odo's office.
Wait a minute, Jake said. You didn't punch a hole in his bed, did you? Nog shook his head irritably.
Of course not. Fear before pleasure. I went to his office to see if he would help me, but he wasn't in. And as I was going out, I swear I saw those eyes staring down at me from the level above.
Jake thought for a moment. Look, he said at last, you think the eyes are red, right?
Orange red,
agreed Nog, shivering.
Hideous, unblinking, staring eyes.
Okay, said Jake with a calming smile. There are lots and lots of red lights all over Deep Space Nine. Did you ever think of that? Nog relaxed a little.
That's right. Cardassians designed the station, and they see farther into infrared than most species. So all their warning lights and operational signals and directional signs are red. Do you think I was so scared? So excited that I could have mistaken some ordinary marker lights for that spirit's eyes?
With a shrug, Jake said, It's possible. You were very excited when you ran out of the restaurant.
Sure,
Nog said, a relieved smile spreading over his face.
Of course. That must be right. After all, I've always been greedy. Often I have lied and cheated and stolen. That's all normal for a Ferengi, maybe even above average. You're right, Jake. What could I have done that would be so bad that a Ferengis would haunt my family?
Nothing at all, Jake said.
Nothing at all, echoed Nog. You're right. Boy, do I feel like a poor merchant. I'm practically a grown Ferengi. I should have more ears than to be frightened like that.
You've got great ears, Jake said. It's just that you were surprised, that's all. He thought of something else and decided to stretch the truth just a little. I'll tell you something you don't know. When your Uncle Quark saw Molly's sketch, he was just as excited as you were. In fact, he was so startled that he threw our order up in the air. My chocolate malted landed right on top of his head. Nog laughed.
I wish I could have seen that, he said. What joy to see one's elders humiliated.
Then he became more serious.
Uncle Quark, I'd better go see him right away. He won't be pleased with me. Jake, could you do me a big favor? I can't pay for it right now, but when I am able...
Hey, it's okay, Jake said. Humans don't... Humans like to do favors for other people, remember?
You're right, Nog said. I was so carried away that I forgot how unreasonable you are. Very well, let's...
Nog stopped short. With a trembling finger, he pointed toward thin air. He yelped, Look! Look there! It followed me! Jake stared in shocked disbelief. The living room lights had dimmed automatically at 9 o'clock, Now, in the darkness, he could just make out a shimmering, transparent silver form, taller than his own father, but so slim it looked emaciated. The face was in darkness, beneath what seemed to be a hood. The skin on the back of Jake's neck prickled into goosebumps. He could see nothing of the thing's features, except two glaring orange-red eyes. Chapter 4. "Run!" shouted Nog, bolting for the door. Jake grabbed the shorter boy's arm. "No!" he yelled. "Wait!" He shivered a little, but he kept his eyes locked on the glimmering, transparent apparition before them. It was just standing there, absolutely still, a couple of meters away, in front of the viewport that looked out on the bright stars of deep space. Jake thought it stood watching them. At least the two reddish-orange glows that seemed to be eyes remained fixed on them. Nog tugged desperately, trying to rip himself free of Jake's grasp, but Jake held on tight. "Nog, I don't think this is a ghost. Look at it closely."
"That face," Nog said, sounding sick, "and I can see right through it."
"What face?" Jake asked. He could see nothing, only a black blank where a face should be. In fact, except for the vague outline in the eyes, he could see no details at all. "Nog, stop trying to pull away." Look, a Ferengus would be scary and threatening, wouldn't it?"
"It is!"
shouted Nog. "No, it isn't. This creature is just standing there. I don't think it wants to harm us."
"Not you, me!"
Nog at last stopped trying to tear away from Jake's grip.
"All right,"
he said miserably, speaking to the spectral form.
"You have me, Ferengist. Show me what penance I must make."
Slowly, the apparition raised an arm. At least, Jake thought he could see the misty outline of an arm moving in something like a lazy wave. The arm moved oddly, as if it had 3 joints, not just a wrist and elbow. Swallowing hard, Jake waved back with his free arm. The hooded head tilted. The creature had noticed that Jake was imitating its actions. It moved the arm again, slowly beckoning to the boys. "Look," Jake said. "It wants us to follow it."
"Into the spirit world,"
Nog said.
"where no one makes money, and everyone is forced to be honest, generous, and miserable for all eternity."
"Nog, stop it," snapped Jake. "I can't see much of this thing, but I'll bet it isn't a Ferengus at all. It's much too tall." Jake took a deep breath. He decided that he had no time to waste with Ferengi mystical beliefs. "It wants us to go with it," he said. "I say we follow it."
Jake, I'm afraid,"
Nog confessed in a shaky voice. His eyes still intent on the figure, Jake said, "All right, I'll follow it then. You find someone, your uncle, or even better, my dad. Let people know that there's a transparent alien on board Deep Space Nine. I'll try to stay with it. The computer can track my locator signal, so they'll be able to find us. Now are you calm?"
"Yes!"
shrieked Nog. Jake winced. "I'm going to let go of you," he said deliberately. "You move away slowly. If the creature starts to follow you, we'll make a run for it. If it stays with me, then go and find some help. Do you understand?"
"Find help," Nog repeated. "I'm ready. Let go."
Carefully, Jake released his hold on Nog's arm. The Ferengi boy edged away very slowly indeed, so slowly that Jake guessed he was almost paralyzed by fear. Then he moved a little faster. Still the transparent shape did not move.
"I'll find help,"
Nog called again. Then he dashed through the door, into the corridor, and out of sight. "All right," Jake said, a little more loudly than necessary. "Can you hear me?" The ghostly shape made no sign. "I will go with you," Jake said. Speaking loudly and with precise pronunciation, Jake added, "I trust you." He took one wary step forward. The transparent figure's arm rose and beckoned again, and the creature floated toward the door. Jake followed it. Without removing its red gaze from him, the figure drifted slowly away, and Jake matched it step for step. The door opened as Jake drew near, and they went outside into the corridor. In the brighter light, the creature almost faded completely, but by squinting, Jake could just make it out. It led him to an unused corridor where only emergency lights glowed, and then he could see it a little better. The alien halted next to a turbolift and pointed at the control panel. Jake hesitated. The Cardassians had thoroughly wrecked the space station before they turned it over to the Bajorans and the Federation. Chief O'Brien had worked hard to get the automatic doors, airlocks, and other mechanical systems functioning again. Jake wondered if this lift was operating normally. Hoping that Nog would hurry, he touched the keypad. A whine of machinery told him the car was coming. After a moment, the lift doors opened. The light in the car chose that instant to flicker and go out. The spectral form of the creature glided inside. Gathering all of his courage, Jake followed the transparent form. The doors slid shut. Jake took a deep, shuddery breath, hoping that he had not made the worst mistake of his life. The lift began to move. When he left Jake and the Ferengus behind, Nog's first impulse was to run, wildly and blindly. He was sure that he had made a narrow escape from a terrible fate. If the young human stupidly wanted to offer himself as a substitute sacrifice, so much the better for Nog. However, something else went into this equation. Jake was Nog's best friend. Once, that would not have meant much to Nog. Ferengi were used to solitary lives, brought up to believe in treachery, deceit, and falsehood as the best ways to deal with one's friends. But Nog, like his uncle Quark, had been learning that the strange ways of humans and others might offer more meaningful rewards than gold-pressed latinum, dilithium, or credits. And so, once his initial panic had subsided, Nog paused to consider what he should do. He hesitated to go to Quark, knowing what a scolding his uncle had given him. Nog was a little afraid of Commander Sisko, who towered over him like a great giant. He thought of Security Chief Odo, but he knew that he would have a hard time convincing the suspicious shapeshifter of anything. Nog imagined that if he told Odo that space was dark and full of stars, the security chief would look out a viewport just to be sure. That left Keiko O'Brien. Although Ferengi believed that women should not teach boys, Nog secretly liked Keiko. She was smart, kind, and, he had to admit, extremely attractive. Where would she be at this time of night? Nog guessed that she would be in her quarters. Molly was only 3, and small human children slept a great deal. He knew where the O'Briens lived, and he hurried there, a furtive small creature easily eluding the glances of the security crew. He finally reached the O'Briens' door and touched the doorbell pad. Almost at once, the door slid open. Chief O'Brien, his curly light brown hair rumpled, stood before him. "You?" he asked. "What are you doing here?" "Who is it?" asked Keiko's voice from inside. Chief O'Brien said, "It's Nog." "Hey!" With a quick twisting movement of a snake, Nog had dropped to the floor and slipped past him. O'Brien grunted in surprise and reached out to grab Nog, missing him by inches. Keiko and her husband had been enjoying a meal before a holographic fire. In its flickering yellow light, Nog danced around the table just out of O'Brien's reach and said, "Teacher, you have to help Jake." "Miles," Keiko said to her husband, as O'Brien tried again to grab Nog, "let him alone. Jake, what's wrong with him?" Nog looked from O'Brien's angry red face to Keiko's expression of concern. "A Ferengist has him," Nog gasped. "A Ferengist?" O'Brien asked. "What the devil's that?" "It's a kind of ghost," Keiko said. "Nog mentioned it earlier today, and I looked it up this afternoon. Nog, is this some kind of trick?" "No, I swear on my hope of prophets. I stake my ears. It's the truth, teacher." "Sit down and tell us about it," Keiko said. It took several minutes, but at last Nog was able to tell the story so that the O'Briens could make some kind of sense of it. "And he was standing in front of the Ferengus in his quarters when I last saw him," Nog finished. "He said to tell someone there was a transparent alien aboard, so I came to you." Chief O'Brien tilted his head. "A ghost made off with him, then? Is that what you're saying?" "A Ferengist," Nog said. The O'Briens looked at each other. "Perhaps you should check it out," Keiko said. "I suppose so," O'Brien agreed. To Nog, he said, "All right, then. Get up and come along with me, and we'll take care of Jake. But if I find this is all a wild goose chase, I'll have a word or two with your father about you, understand?" "There are no wild gooses," Nog said. "Only Jake and the Ferengist." "Geese," Keiko corrected. She said to her husband, "Are you going to call Commander Sisko?" "I think I'd better see him in person,"
O'Brien replied. "Those Cardassians have been raising all sorts of trouble, and he may be in conference. It'll only take a few minutes. Keep my food warm for me."
"All right." Nog left with O'Brien, but when they reached the promenade level, O'Brien said,
"Now go along home with you. It's late for a boy to be about. I'll take care of everything."
Nog walked away, but as soon as he was sure O'Brien was no longer looking, he turned and darted along the promenade, following the chief engineer. It was not that Nog did not trust O'Brien, but he knew how fantastic his story must sound to anyone who did not believe in Ferengists. He wanted to assure himself that Commander Sisko would really do everything he could to find Jake and help him escape from the clutches of that terrible transparent monster. They were almost to the lift that led to the ops level when a shouting, swearing mob burst out of one of the shops. Nog danced back as a cursing Cardassian swung a huge hand at a smaller Bajoran. More Bajorans came running to join the fight, and from somewhere more Cardassians arrived. In an instant, the brawl swept between the distant O'Brien and Nog. In another instant, the fight became a riot as it spread to the rest of the crowd. Odo's security crew came running from all directions, phasers drawn. Deciding that he had enough trouble to deal with already, Nog darted away, fleeing by an emergency route that only he knew. The clanky, creaking turbolift shuddered to a halt. For one terrifying instant, Jake was sure that the doors had malfunctioned and that he was trapped in this lightless coffin. Then, with a weary hiss, the doors opened and a little light leaked in. Jake had no idea where he was. The lift had gone down toward the lower core area of the station. That part was all engineering, power, and systems control, but like the rest of the station, it was not all repaired. The section that he stepped out into was another one that the Cardassians had ruined. Wall plates dangled from wires and tubing, and only a dim orange-red glow from the emergency lights gave any illumination. As soon as he was out of the elevator car, Jake looked back for his ghostly companion. For a moment, he could not see it at all. Then he realized that what he thought was a reflection of one of the emergency lights really was the glow of the creature's eyes. Jake squinted and half-turned his head, looking at the figure from the corner of his eye. That technique worked when he was looking for an especially dim star in astronomy class, and it helped a little here. Yes, there was the barely visible mistiness of the hood and shoulders, the spectral shimmer that marked the creature's body. The form moved slowly forward. Jake stepped aside to let it pass, and then on impulse he reached out to touch it as it came up to him. His hand plunged through empty air, but he felt something, a sensation of prickly coolness. The creature drew itself up and turned to glare down at him. Sorry, Jake stammered, yanking his hand away. I won't do that again." After a moment, the creature backed away, beckoning. Jake followed it, shuffling his feet in the dark to avoid any unpleasant surprises like loose deck plates or scattered debris. Through the floor, he felt a constant humming vibration, and he guessed that he was not far above the fusion reactors. He knew that only 2 of the 6 reactors were functional. The Cardassians had disabled the rest before they turned the station over to the Bajorans and Starfleet. Those disabled reactors were potentially deadly sources of radiation. O'Brien had shielded them all, though, and he had made sure there was no direct way to approach them. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, but the gliding figure ahead of him gave no sign. Jake raised his hand to activate the emergency homing signal of his locator, but then thought better of it. He was sure that Nog would somehow get through to his father. He was not sure what the creature might do if Jake suddenly summoned help. Jake could imagine all sorts of reactions from the ghost. If a security crew should burst in, brandishing phasers, maybe it would attack. Maybe it would disappear. Maybe, Jake could not help smiling at the thought, a few humans would frighten the ghost away. He lowered his hand and followed the transparent figure's slow progress. It came to a hatchway, one of the ponderous Cardassian gear-toothed security doors, and somehow it activated the sensor because the door rolled away. Jake stepped through the hatch. He was in a room that once, perhaps, had been a repair or manufacturing station. It was about 6 meters square with dim blue light coming from the ceiling panels, and even that much illumination, the ghost, faded out completely. Jake stood uncertainly for a moment. Behind him, the door sealed itself again. With a puzzled expression, Jake sniffed the air. It smelled funny. Sharp electrical scent that was a little like ozone, as if you were breathing a mixture slightly adjusted to someone else's biological requirements. After a moment, the lights dimmed and turned red-orange. Jake looked about him. Was that the ghost? Yes, it was. The familiar transparent shape stooped over a control panel built into one wall. It had turned down the light so that Jake could see it. It faced him and beckoned again. Jake started toward it. Look, he said, I don't want to complain, but this is getting pretty boring. Where are we off to now? The specter held a hand up, or at least the sleeve raised, again bending strangely, as if the long arm had an extra elbow. Jake could not see details well enough to be sure that a hand was sticking out of the end of the sleeve. You want me to stop? He asked. He did, standing still. After a moment, the transparent shape made a pushing gesture. Back? Jake asked. He took one step backward. Then the figure wanted him half a step to the left, then half a step forward again. Jake began to feel exasperated. I don't know what you're doing, he complained. If this is some kind of ghost folk dance, I don't particularly want to learn it. Now what? The creature seemed satisfied with Jake's placement at last. It drew something out of its robe and pointed it toward him. Jake saw a twinkling starburst of light and then an explosion. He yelped and closed his eyes as a hot flash of light burst around him. The deck seemed to shiver under his feet, and a hot whiff of ozone burned his nose. He felt for a sickening second he was about to faint, that everything was whirling around him. Then the moment passed. Cautiously, Jake opened his eyes to glaring light. Standing before him was a tall figure in a silvery gray robe. Its deep-set red eyes glowed from a dark gray face. Its smooth surface had no trace of a nose, but there was a downturned mouth. From the sleeve of the robe issued a skeletal arm ending in a bony hand that grasped a device made of coppery spheres, crystal rods, and shimmering lights. The hand lowered the device, and the surrounding glare faded to a more bearable level. As soon as it did, Jake yelled in terror. Deep Space Nine had vanished. 1 billion stars shone in fierce, undimmed brilliance all around him, and in the depths of space he and the creature were standing on nothing.